to hold on to you. And the thing that you thought you were in control of begins to control you. And now you're not holding it as much as it begins to hold you. And the giant keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. Jimmy, get bigger. You need to be bigger. Right? If you feed the seed, it gets bigger. Jimmy, get bigger. Get bigger. Breathe in more. Okay, that's kind of weird. I don't even want to go close. So, all right. I need a bigger giant. I'm sorry, dude. I need a bigger giant. Because Nate's got himself wrapped up into some stuff, and it's just not going to work. So come on, I need a big giant now. I need a big giant. I mean, you're cool, you're good. Bring me on big. Here we go. That's it. Now we go, big giant. That's what I want. That's what I want. I got a big giant now, right? Right? Because this is what happens. The thing that you thought you could hold now is holding you. And now the giant is growing and growing and growing. And now you're in trouble. You all right? Just be careful with that sword, bro. He's like doing Karate Kid out there. Let me tell you why this is so important. Nate, I want you to look behind you real quick. Just look behind you. See anything back there? No. So there's nothing back there right now. And so there's a temptation for you and I whenever we're in the valley like David was. There's a temptation for you and I to believe that when we're squaring off against the giant is to think that it's just me versus the giant and there's nothing else on the line. But you know what's behind you, Nate? And you can't see it yet because you're too young right now. But you know what's behind you? What's behind you is eventually there's going to be an amazing woman that you're going to fall in love with, you're going to want to marry. Now, it's far too soon for you to talk about this. Your parents are in the room. So, okay, but it's going to happen one day, like 30 years from now, probably, right? And so here's the problem. Here's the problem. The problem that Nate doesn't realize now, and the problem that you don't realize right now, is that the stuff you're into, and that the giant that you're squaring off with, the giant that you're telling yourself in your mind, it's okay, I can handle it, as it begins to handle you, you don't realize that the giant you're facing, you're gonna pass on to the people that you love the most. And they're going to end up facing the same battles, and they're also going to end up facing the consequences of what you've done. A lot of you young men in the room, you dream about the day you're going to fall in love. You dream about the woman that you're going to marry. You dream about the kind of husband that you're going to be. A lot of you young men in the room, you dream about the kind of father that you're going to be. You think thoughts about how you're going to be a better dad than your dad was to you. You think thoughts about how you're going to be a better husband than what your father was to your mother, because some of you have fathers that have walked out on you. So you've told yourself, I'm going to be better, I'm going to do more, I'm going to do better. Not if you enter marriage addicted to a giant named pornography. See, now it's completely different, because now all of the excuses you've been telling yourself about your giant, hey, I can deal with it, I'm in control, it's just a little here and there. Now all of a sudden, the thing that you thought you were in charge of is now in charge of you. Hey, young man, every time you look at porn, you enter the school of pornography, and it teaches you 3 lessons over and over and over again. These aren't on the notes. I just felt led to share this afternoon when I was praying and getting ready for tonight, because there's some young men in this room, there's many of you in this room, and you're fighting a giant, and the name of your giant is pornography. And porn teaches you 3 things. It teaches you that a real body is not good enough, and that one body is not good enough, and that your wife's body isn't good enough. Listen to me, I'm telling you, you think it's harmless, you think it's just boys will be boys, you think it's just, it is what it is, hey man, it's all over the place, I can't get away from it, it's on my phone, it's on the internet, my friends send it to me, they send me pictures all the time, what am I supposed to do? So it's just harmless in your mind. I'm telling you that the giant of porn that you're wrestling with is going to ruin the dream you have of an intimate relationship in the marriage that you think is going to be so incredible, because you're going to drag that giant into your life and into your future. Years ago, it wasn't Nate that was standing here. It was another young man. It was a young man named John. John's giant wasn't pornography. John's giant was that when he was a young man, he had been sexually abused. And John stood at the crossroads of this moment here, bound by shame, bound by the darkness, bound by the valley, thinking he was gonna die in the valley, looked at the giant of sexual abuse, looked behind him, and dreamt of the day that he'd be a husband, and dreamt of the day that he'd have kids, and said to himself, I will be the one in my generation to defeat this giant, because, dear God, I will not pass on to the next generation what was given to me. I will stand strong. I will do whatever I have to do to fight the battle in this valley, in this moment. This valley isn't going to be a graveyard for me. It's going to be a battlefield, and I'm going to fight it. If John hadn't done that, most likely I wouldn't be here today. Because John's my dad. And my dad decided that he was going to stand tall and strong, and he was going to face the pain and darkness of that giant, and he wasn't going to pass it on to his kids, and he wasn't going to pass it on to the next generation. Remember this, one generation's captivity leads to the next generation's compromise. David saw it. He was in the valley of Elah, and he said, this dude, this giant, he shouldn't even be here right now, but he is. But I'm not going to let him go into the next generation. You know why some of you are fighting against the giants you're facing in your life? You know why some of you are fighting with your addiction, and you're fighting with the porn, and you're fighting with the hurt and the pain and the bitterness and the insecurity and the cutting and the drug use and the sexual promiscuity? You know why you're fighting with it? You're fighting the same giants that your mom and your dad fought and that your grandparents fought, that they never defeated, and so it got passed on to you. I'd give my life to see a generation that will rise to the occasion and say, you know what? No more, no more, no more. I'm standing tall and strong against the giant. I wouldn't be here today. Hey, Dad, you're sitting right up here. Hundreds of kids decided they were going to become full-time missionaries today because when you were a young man, you fought the giant. Last night there were 3 girls that were refugees from the country of Nepal that believed in Hinduism, but they found Jesus last night. Dad, because you fought the giant years ago, you allowed me to stand here and be a vessel that God could use for thousands of kids. I'm telling you, you gotta fight the giants in your life. I'm telling you, the valley of the shadow of death is not your graveyard, it's your battlefield. It's the place where God's brought you to square off against the giants that you deal with in your life. You feel dark, you feel lonely, you feel buried, you feel like you're abandoned, you feel like you're all alone. I want to tell you something, man. The seed of Jesus Christ inside of you is not a seed that's buried unto death. You're not buried. Buried is death, buried is finality, buried is a tomb, buried is no hope. This generation, you, regardless of what giant you're facing, you're not buried, you're planted. Planted is coming forth. Planted is hope. Planted is expectation. Planted is not a tomb, but it's a garden that brings forth life, resurrection power. You're planted. Reminds me of that old preacher story. Maybe some of you heard it. There's an old lady. She was poor. She's down to her last $20. She didn't know what to do. She needed food. She had to pay the water bills, the electric bills. She didn't know what to do. She didn't have nothing.